Sexual health conversation happens from our first moment of birth. But can sexual health conversations happen alone? Sometimes sexual health conversations can be surprising, startling, shocking. And sometimes somebody just has to get our attention to have a sexual health conversation. Other times, sexual health conversations just plain hurt. According to the Boston College Dean of Students, the distribution of condoms is not congruent with our values and traditions. This is what sex therapist and author Marty Klein calls the inherent conflict in sex. These cultural conflicts are evident in the health disparities among adolescent boys not having enough information to protect themselves from HIV. It's even evident in today's headlines. Yesterday, a survey is released in our country that says 12,000 women and 13,000 men are sexually assaulted in our U.S. military in 2012. So now, what is a sexual health conversation? What actually constitutes a sexual health conversation? And how might knowing 6 basic fundamentals of sexual health motivate and initiate more constructive sexual health conversations between HIV professionals and their clients? Now, it's pretty basic. There are 3 relationships we all have with HIV. 1, we know we are living with HIV. 2, we know we are currently not living with HIV. And 3, we don't know our relationship with HIV. I want to provide some background on sexual health. Prior to 1979, before the World Health Organization began to expand definitions of sexual health, pretty much everywhere on the planet, sexual health meant 2 things. You either did not get a sexually transmitted infection, or you did not have an unplanned pregnancy. So for your grandparents, most of your parents spent most of their lives thinking sexual health meant I did not acquire a sexually transmitted infection, and I did not get pregnant in an unplanned manner. Well, thank goodness, 35 years or more ago, the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Organization, the U.S. Surgeon General, just to name a few, began to expand our understandings of sexual health well beyond the limitation of preventing disease and unplanned pregnancy. Sexual health now is a matter of well-being in both our physical, our emotional, our social well-being, our spiritual well-being, as it relates to sexuality and to our sexual activities. And specifically, relevant to today's discussion, sexual health is an integration of sexuality into our lives while avoiding the negative and harmful consequences of sex for ourselves and our community. If we take all of the conceptualizations of sexual health and adapt them and hone them down, I believe we can start with 6 very specific fundamentals of sexual health that I believe are the foundation for every sexual health conversation. Consent, non-exploitive, honest, shared values, mutual pleasure, protected against STIs, HIV, and pregnancy. These 6 brought together, I propose, are the basis of many conflicts clients have in their relationship with HIV. And if HIV professionals are empowered to have these conversations constructively with their clients, we can reduce the transmission rates of HIV in our country. Now, today's headlines are an example. Consent is still where it's at. You cannot have sexual health with non-consensual sex. At its most basic, sexual health means sex is always consensual. So when two people are having sex, each of them must give permission each step of the way for that sexual activity. Consent is the fundamental right to regulate one's body. You know consent is present in a sexual relationship when each and every sexual interaction is welcomed by your partner to either give or receive pleasure. Now, we move from permission to focusing on negotiating power, exploitation, non-exploitation. Sexual health is non-exploitive. Exploitation is present when power differences are exploited to gain access to a sexual partner. Sexual activity must be freely chosen and not a forced choice based upon one's personal power over another. Exploitation, coercion, extortion, threats to life and safety have no reasonable place in a sexual health conversation. Now, honesty is the core of sexual health. And honesty is at the core of one's relationship with HIV. Knowing one's relationship with HIV and being able to talk about it is the essential honesty conversation. But what about the millions of men and women who do not know their relationship with HIV? Is it socially taboo to say, I do not know my relationship with HIV? And if this is so, who gives permission to honestly answer the question, what's your relationship with HIV? And the person says, I don't know. What if the person doesn't want to know their relationship with HIV and tells every single sexual partner they ever have sex with, I don't know my relationship with HIV? Is that a sexual health conversation? Shared values. Sex researchers are beginning to study the hundreds of reasons why people have sex. And they're finding that some of the most common motivations people have for sex is the shared values they have in common for having the sexual experience. Shared values tells us that sex has meaning. Whether it's a one-time sexual encounter with a stranger, whether it's a sexual encounter with your shared partner, whether it's a sexual experience with yourself, or whether it's an appointment with the dominatrix. Sex has meaning. Consider this a monogamous couple. They're in a sexual health conversation. They wonder if their heightened pleasure without a condom during intercourse, and their erotic exchange of fluids, and the meaning of that fluid exchange is worth the risk of the negative sexual health outcome. Shared values means that the tension between one's values and risk and pleasure are always at stake. I often find the concept of mutually pleasurable really a painfully difficult discussion when it comes to our relationship with HIV. It seems as if pleasure and HIV are these like feuding adversaries in a sexual health conversation. And yet, some of our most vulnerable, curious sexual health moments require us to wonder, well, what turns us on? Have we forgotten how early in life pleasure is linked with sexual development? True story. A mom is very interested in having a constructive sexual health conversation with her 6-year-old daughter, who has learned the joy of masturbating in her car seat, walking by the Lucky Charms at the grocery store, and while standing next to mother while she's cooking. Now, mother is very interested in the sexual health conversation focusing on boundaries and privacy, and is not wanting to disapprove of her daughter's masturbation. So the sexual health conversation goes something like this. Now, honey, I told you, it's okay to touch your body that way, but we do that in private. We don't do that where other people can see. So you can do that in your bedroom. Okay, sweetie? Okay. Well, 2 weeks later, mother's been having this conversation now every day. And so here's yet another day. Mother's having this conversation with her 6-year-old and saying, now, sweetie, remember what mother told you? And she's going through the boundaries and she's empathic. And it ends with the usual, okay. Today, the 6-year-old daughter lets out this exasperated sigh, looks up at her mother, puts her hands on her hips, and in the most assertive voice she knows, she says, Mom, if you just tried it, you'd know how good it feels. The last sexual health fundamental is protection from sexually transmitted infections, HIV, and unwanted pregnancy. I list this fundamental at the end because I believe if a person is engaged in consensual, non-exploitive, honest, shared values, and mutually pleasurable sex, they are armed to have the kind of sexual health conversation that keeps negative sexual health outcomes at very low levels. Not risk-free, but with these first 5 sexual health fundamentals, a person of any age is capable of successfully negotiating their sexual behavior and turn-ons, while at the same time reducing the likelihood of getting a sexually transmitted infection, HIV, or an unwanted pregnancy. Okay, let's take a breath. How have you felt listening to these 6 fundamentals of sexual health? Where did you find yourself getting defensive? Did you want to have a debate? Or did you just find yourself pondering something? Maybe you just left the room and only came back at the punchline for the masturbation story. Whatever happened, it's important to notice how you felt, what you thought, how you behaved, what you meandered through your mind, because that's information about you. Your reaction tells you something about you. How you responded is a window into your client's experience in a sexual health conversation as well as your own. Stay in the conversation. Find ways to organize your emotions, thoughts, reactions within these 6 fundamentals of sexual health. I believe sexual health is like building a good foundation for a house. When a person understands the 6 fundamentals of sexual health and maintains them within their own personal behaviors and values, they can build a good house, a solid home for their relationship with HIV.